Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chair and Chief Executive Officer of the Freedom Forum, Jan Newharth.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Jan Newharth, the Chair and CEO of Freedom Forum. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight as we gather to celebrate 50 years of the Student Press Law Center. And to celebrate all of those who have made this half-century possible: the staff, the board, the supporters, the partners, and most of all, the student journalists and advisors who rely on SPLC's work every day. It's wonderful to see so many friends and familiar faces, and to have with us tonight Mary Beth Tinker. Mary Beth's courage as a student continues to inspire new generations to speak up and to stand tall. Freedom Forum and the Student Press Law Center share a long and meaningful history, from our early years together in Roslyn to co-presenting the Courage in Student Journalism Awards to the Year of the Student Journalist campaign in 2019. That shared commitment continues today in our collective work to safeguard the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. At Freedom Forum, our focus is on helping Americans know, value, and defend the First Amendment freedoms of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. Through our on-campus programs and partnerships, we're connecting with students and educators nationwide to build understanding of what those freedoms protect and why they matter. At your seats tonight, you'll find a copy of our Student's Guide to the First Amendment, a resource we developed and made possible this fall through our campus initiative at 4 public universities. It's one of the ways we're helping students learn what these freedoms mean in practice and how they can use them to make their voices heard. That same spirit is reflected in our national campaign, brought to you by the First Amendment, which was shaped in part by feedback from college students. The Brought to You By campaign helps remind all of us that so much of what we do every day, from choosing what to wear, to creating a playlist, to cheering for our favorite sports team, is made possible by the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. I'd like to share a short video from that campaign, celebrating 1A freedoms and the creative spirit that drives them.
The power of life and death is in the tongue. If you want something to die, if you want freedom to die, if you want justice to die, if you want love to die, stop talking about it.
And now, please join me in welcoming someone who has been a steadfast advocate for student journalists and a true partner to Freedom Forum, the Executive Director of the Student Press Law Center, Gary Green.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you to the Freedom Forum for welcoming us into this beautiful space. What a perfect setting to celebrate 50 years of the Student Press Law Center. As Jan mentioned, Freedom Forum has been a valued partner throughout much of our history, and we're so grateful to share this milestone with all of you here tonight. At this point, all of you know that SPLC is celebrating its 50th anniversary, but what you might not know is how it all began. Back in 1974, the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Foundation commissioned Pulitzer Prize-winning author Jack Nelson to study the state of high school journalism. His report, Captive Voices, revealed pervasive censorship across schools and identified the need for an organization that would stand up for students' First Amendment rights. From that report, an urgent call for action, and the Student Press Law Center was born. Partnering with Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, SPLC was founded to ensure that student journalists would always have a trusted advocate, someone in their corner when their voices were silenced. 50 years later, we remain the only legal organization in the nation exclusively devoted to defending and advancing the free press rights of student journalists. And with attacks on student press freedom increasing every day, our mission has never been more essential. As long as we're here, no student journalist will ever have to navigate a censorship challenge alone. No student will ever have to defend their First Amendment rights without our legal support. Even as threats intensify, we will be here, continuing to protect student press freedom, defend student voices, and foster powerful journalism. Because student journalists are not the next generation of truth tellers. They are this generation of truth tellers. We know that when we invest in student journalists, we invest in something far greater than student media. Caring for student journalists and giving them the freedom and the tools to tell the truth is an investment in our nation's future. That's what your support makes possible. It's rare for a small nonprofit to survive 5 decades, but SPLC has done so because of people like you, our donors, our partners, our board members, and institutions who believe in the power of student journalism. Many have helped us reach this moment, and while I can't name all of them tonight, I do want to recognize some key sponsors that helped tonight happen. The Freedom Forum to start with. Thank you, Freedom Forum. Ohio University's E.W. Scripps School of Journalism, the Knight Foundation, the Law Office of Matthew S.L. Cate, American Press Institute, Gibson Dunn, and Mission Partners. The entire list of supporters is featured in tonight's program. Please give a round of applause to all of our sponsors this evening. Thank you for standing with us. And now, before we move into our panel discussion, I want to further recognize the Knight Foundation, an early and enduring supporter of SPLC, from its initial endowment investment to its most recent infusion of support for student journalism. Few people are as passionate about this cause as Duck Liu, Knight's Director of Journalism, and we are so grateful for his leadership and his partnership. Please join me in welcoming Duck Liu to the stage.
Well, thank you, Gary, for those kind introductions. And so I am pleased tonight to represent Knight Foundation and our long-standing partnership with Student Press Law Center, because student journalists are journalists, period. They deserve the same access as any other reporter to legal advice and guidance, and that's why Knight Foundation is proud to support the Student Press Law Center as it celebrates its 50th anniversary and readies itself to meet the needs of student journalists for the next 50 years. And our communities surely need that. There are somewhere around 1,700 to 1,800 counties in the United States that are news deserts or at risk of becoming a news desert. And research from the University of Vermont estimates that of those counties, there are 1,300 colleges or universities located within or adjacent to one of those news deserts. So imagine, just imagine the potential for our communities and our entire democracy if we could unleash the power of student journalism in even a fraction of those places. And fortunately, a growing number of student journalists have ably filled the local news gaps for millions of Americans, winning awards and holding power to account. There are already an estimated 3,000 student journalists publishing more than 11,000 stories in local news outlets just last year. So a primary source of local news and information for millions of Americans is likely to originate from inside of a classroom. And for many communities, that quality of student reporting can be game-changing. Over the past few years, we've seen student journalists jump into the fray to report on the long road to recovery from major hurricanes in North Carolina and in Florida. Student journalists are sticking together in defense of their peers in Indiana and at Stanford. And we've seen essential community reporting from places as diverse as Southern Missouri to Washington to Mississippi. 8 student newsrooms were recently granted awards of up to $100,000 from Press Forward, a national movement of funders that is seeking to invest more than $500 million into local news. And so at Knight Foundation, we are focused on shaping a journalism industry that is worthy, truly worthy of these students' talents and that can sustain their vital work. We hope that you will join us in supporting the Student Press Law Center. As student journalists and their programs evolve to meet the needs of their communities, the Student Press Law Center is evolving alongside them to navigate the legal complexities and considerations that come with sophisticated accountability and investigative reporting. Our industry needs these reporters. Our country needs these reporters. And these reporters need the Student Press Law Center. So thank you for your time tonight. I'm really pleased to represent Knight Foundation in this important work. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Doug. And now, please join me in welcoming CNN Justice correspondent and Student Press Law Center board member Caitlin Polance to kick off our program for the evening.
Hi. Thanks, Gary. I'm here, I'm part of this group as a board member, but I'm also a former student journalist. And this is a city full of journalists who had to start somewhere, and many of them started at their college and high school, newspapers, television stations, radio stations, yearbooks, and in other publications. And what I wanted to be able to do tonight, what Gary wants to do here, is highlight the sort of role that student journalists play not just in our community, but also the threat they are under in their own communities. Apologies to Halloween, because we're just a couple days away, but honestly, the call is coming from inside the house. You are going to hear that from our student journalists tonight, and you are also going to hear about the experiences of Eugene Daniels and Margaret Sullivan as student journalists, now professional journalists, how what they did carries them forward. And luckily, there are Ghostbusters around here. They are not just Gary Green as executive director at SPLC, but also Mike Heaston, Jonathan Galston-Falk, who are the lawyers here that receive the calls on deadline, on the hotline, when there is some sort of need for a student journalist to have help, to have legal help specifically. So let me introduce the rest of the panel, and we'll have a more robust discussion about student journalism. Tonight, we are welcoming some very esteemed journalists here, both professionals and students who are doing very serious reporting at the level of professional journalists. These are not just student journalism. Student journalism is journalism, as Doug said. Eugene Daniels is a senior Washington correspondent and co-host of The Weekend on MSNBC. Daniels has served as Politico's chief playbook and White House correspondent and is the past president of the White House Correspondents Association. He was a student journalist at Colorado State University. Eugene? Have a seat. Sure. Margaret Sullivan, I'm going to bring everybody up so that we can have a full chat here. Margaret Sullivan is a veteran journalist who has served as the media columnist for the Washington Post and the New York Times. She is currently the executive director at the Craig Newmark Center for Journalism Ethics and Security at Columbia University, and she writes about media, politics, and culture for The Guardian US and also about these issues on her Substack, American Crisis. But more importantly, she was a student journalist at her high school in Buffalo and at Georgetown University. And then we have 3 student journalists who are joining us tonight on this panel. Gregorio Oliveras Gutierrez is the editor-in-chief of The Retrograde at the University of Texas at Dallas, formerly the editor-in-chief of The Mercury. Gregorio? Rosalio Finkelstein is the co-editor-in-chief of Theogony, the Alexandria City High School newspaper. And James Labresco is the former editor-in-chief of Theogony and is currently at Brown University studying journalism. So Margaret and Eugene, let's start with you guys and your professional experience. So you're both former student journalists, current professional journalists, and I want to ask each of you, had that helped you in what you do now?
Shall I start? Thank you very much. Is this sounding okay? Yeah. Okay. Great to be here. I love this organization and what it stands for, and I love student journalists, so I'm very thrilled to be here and be a part of this. You know, I'm very sure that most journalists would not be doing what they're doing now if it hadn't been for serving on high school and college publications, and that's certainly true for me. I also feel like there should be a shout out to advisors who are so incredibly important, and I would say that a very important role model for me was the advisor of my high school newspaper, which, by the way, was called the Kaleidoscope, at Narden Academy in Buffalo. You know, very important in my life in just encouraging me. And, you know, it just goes up through, you know, there really, for me, there was no, I started at something like age 15, and I've been doing journalism for a very long time, and there really was no sort of dividing line between being a student journalist and being a professional journalist, with the possible exception of some money. Which is helpful, which is a good thing. But, you know, we're at a very difficult time for journalism and for student journalism, and it's really great that we're able to be here and support something that matters so much.
Eugene, how was your experience as a journalist at Colorado State?
What's funny is I actually went to Colorado State University wanting to be a lawyer. When I was a kid, I was like 6. People were like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be a lawyer because I get to fight, and that is what I'm into. I was a very annoying child. And then when I got there, I was studying political science, going to be pre-law, and then I took a class about special interest groups, and we had a lobbyist talk to us, and I was like, no offense to the lobbyists in here. I was uninterested in that behavior. So I had taken one journalism course with this woman named Pam Jackson, and I burst into her office very dramatically and, you know, told her, I was like, my whole dream is ruined. I'm 19 and my life is over. And she said to me, maybe I don't want to be a powerful person, because in my head I was going to be a politician. She said, maybe you want to hold powerful people accountable. And to your point about advisors, to this day, she is someone I still lean on. She came to the White House Correspondents' Dinner with me as my guest, and has always kind of helped mold my career as I've gone along. And when I made that change, first someone was like, you know, just take the classes, you'll be fine. But then I was like, but there's all these kids that are like running around with cameras. Who are they? And that was student media. And so Colorado State University is great that we have kind of the student media corporation is completely separate from the university. So the funding's different, the staff is completely different, which is important in these times when, you know, maybe some people in charge of universities may be leaning on student media in a different way than they should be. And so I started on the newspaper as a advice columnist. It was terrible advice. I had no business giving it at all. Very bad advice when I look back at it. I worked on the TV. We had a TV station, so I was an anchor and reporter there. We had a magazine, so I wrote magazine articles. I was the marketing director. For some reason, I did everything, and a radio station as well.
You were working with advisors.
Yeah, so we had advisors all the time helping.
Did you ever run into a situation with the university or the community or even the local government that you were covering where you needed some sort of help? And who do student journalists go to for that sort of thing?
We always went to our advisors. So the Rocky Mountain Student Corporation is very lucky that the advisors and the lawyers are kind of in-house. I'm sure SPLC, they would take your advice and assistance, but so much of that was in-house. We went directly to the advisors and they kind of worked us through it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's happening right now in student journalism that's a little bit different than like when we went to college is that there are universities that are cutting advisor positions. And so students are left without any sort of adult or professional guidance. And so who do they call? That's what the Student Press Law Center would come in to do. Margaret, I have a question for you. You write often about the decline of newspapers across America. What role do students play in reporting, and is that the sort of journalism that you want to see filling the void in communities?
Well, I mean, I think we all know that local newspapers, and in fact local news generally, has been in decline, and that's a tragic thing for our democracy, because it's a way that people in communities have had sort of a common understanding of reality and knowing what's going on in their communities. So as that's happened, student publications that are in, as was said during opening remarks, student publications that are in those areas, in those cities, in those communities, help to fill a vacuum. And, the work really couldn't be more important.
Yeah. I'd actually want to get to the students' work and have you guys react to it as well, because these stories are quite something. So let's start with Gregorio. So actually, I need to say before we even get into talking about what has happened and the coverage that you've done, but Gregorio was just honored with the College Level Courage in Student Journalism Award for his staff's work, which you're about to hear about. And just before tonight's program, Rosalia and James were informed that they have been chosen as the winners of the High School Courage in Student Journalism Award, which is going to be formally presented to you eventually, soon, by the National Scholastic Press Association Conference.
That's news to us. So that's
okay. So the Courage Award for many years was co-sponsored by the Freedom Forum, as Jan had mentioned in her remarks. So we're delighted to have our winners here, but they have also at times been losers. Sorry, guys, to say this. We all, but I mean that in a way where you have faced some struggles within what you're trying to publish and even the very existence of your publication. So Gregorio, at the University of Texas, there had been tensions at the university between the student newspaper funded by the university called the Mercury and the campus administration. In 2024, the Mercury took on covering pro-Palestinian protests on campus. This was something that happened all over the country and that many student newspapers were covering. And universities responded to that in very different ways, as I'm sure you all are aware. Gregorio, as the editor-in-chief of the Mercury, he was fired from his job as the editor-in-chief, and this was perceived as a clear message of retaliation about the coverage of the protests. The administration essentially made it clear to Gregorio that they wanted to control what he was going to be writing about and what his staff at the Mercury would be writing about. The Student Press Law Center then got involved. There was a letter sent to the administration asking and demanding, really, for the administration to allow the students to exercise their First Amendment rights of covering the protests there. And in response, Gregorio and other students at the Mercury closed the paper and went fully independent. They now run a different paper called The Retrograde. So Gregorio, tell us about how that experience felt to you, having to go through it and having to be a leader on a campus, covering your campus with the people in charge of your campus.
Yes.
Not hostile, not interested in what you were writing about.
So when I joined the Mercury, there was never like a point where the relationship wasn't hostile. I was interested in the newspaper because they ran a story in the very first issue of the fall semester in my freshman year talking about a cat torturer on campus who was employed by the school and had just been charged in the state of Texas for killing his girlfriend's cats and torturing the other to the point that it had to go to the ER. The student newspaper criticized the school for still employing someone who was such a threat to their own partner, who was undergoing such serious allegations, and was allowed to operate our testing center where students were forced to go to take tests. So I was like, oh, I want to join that paper. That seems so interesting. I joined the paper. That same semester is when you have October 7th happen. You see students begin protesting in support of Palestine's liberation. You see students counter-protesting. On our campus, we had something known as the Spirit Rocks. Students spray painted these, and they had been doing so for 20 years over many contentious issues. Our administration sent an email saying, "Thank you so much for choosing to express yourselves in a civil and wise manner on the rocks." On the first day of Thanksgiving break, when everyone went home, they got rid of them. There's never been a point where we've had a normal relationship with our campus. They hate when we cover the things they do. My first day as editor-in-chief was our encampment. We had snipers posted on top of every building. We had grenade launchers. We had armored military vehicles, and over 60 riot police with rifles and batons there to stop students from praying and studying in the center of campus. When I chose to cover this, when I chose to investigate, we spent a month trying to get information from our campus administration. Complete silence. We filed a public records request, and while we were waiting for that response, we published the information we had, because this was the most historic and the most violent day in UTD history. The administration's response? They demoted our advisor and told me that my head was on the chopping block. Of course, we began to prepare. We contacted SPLC throughout this whole fiasco. We tried to do everything we could to make sure all of our T's were crossed and our I's were dotted. And that meant nothing, because come fall 2024, we had a meeting with the new advisor. They told us that unless we did prior review, we wouldn't be traveling to educational conferences anymore because they couldn't make business decisions. I told them that prior review, to my understanding, isn't legal. And so long as I'm editor-in-chief, we won't be doing prior review. I should not have given them that idea. They did fire me. But we started our own paper because our students aren't paid enough to be committed to the idea of the Mercury. They're committed to good investigative journalism. They're committed to real coverage of the issues that matter to students in North Texas. So we unanimously formed the Retrograde.
Can I ask you, one of the things that sometimes you hear in a university setting is that you should just be students, go to class and learn journalism that way. Why is it important for you to be able to participate in this and to cover what you covered on your campus?
One fun thing to note, UTD does not have a journalism program. They cut it in the early 2000s because they thought journalism wasn't viable anymore. Instead, the Mercury is what we had. The Mercury had an advisor that was a professional staff member, and we worked very closely with local journalists to get professional training from the experts who are doing it in the modern day. That was something that the editor-in-chief was in charge of organizing, and it's something we've continued to organize because the school never gave us education. They never gave us that stuff, that kind of information. We had to get it for ourselves, and we continue to get it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for students to do this kind of journalism because at a university the size of UT Dallas, and it's not just because we're big, we have over 30,000 students, there are public officials there. They are in charge of using our tuition money. If you go to a small school, if you go to a private school, you are giving them your tuition dollars to give you a good education. And when they're bringing snipers, when they are disrupting your campus, when they are taking away campus traditions because they feel that it is inconvenient to them to oversee it, they don't want students to use their First Amendment rights anymore, well, that actually interferes with my time as a student. I'm a political science and pre-law student. When I see this happening, I remember kind of Supreme Court cases that we've studied. I remember the things that we've discussed about what the government ought to do and what it can't do. And all I see is red flag after red flag of these are things that we can't do. And if we're not trying to hold them accountable, they'll do whatever they want, which often is not in the best interests of our university, of our students. Mm-hmm. On the day of May 1st, when students were being brutally arrested, our president was in Harlan Crow, the billionaire philanthropist and sponsor of some Supreme Court justices, mansion in Dallas, just hanging out. We found that through public records requests. He wasn't there.
Did you write a story on it?
We covered it in our news coverage of the protests.
So
yes.
One thing that I wanted to point out from what Gregorio has said here is that not only is it a letter that's coming from the Student Press Law Center to the university administration, but there's a legal hotline where he's on the phone regularly with the lawyers here talking to them about what he can do, what his options are, because without a journalism program, there aren't other people in the sphere who can advise. I also want to bring in James and Rosalia because I think their story is similar. They are high school students, underline that. And James and Rosalia are in a school district, Alexandria City, which I believe is in, Remember the Titans, yes. But Alexandria City High School has 2 separate campuses, and the policy of the school district is to bus students from one to the other for different classes, depending on what they had. There's a long series of investigative articles that are incredible journalism. You should read them, that their publication, Theogony, wrote about how students were missing classes during this busing situation. Students being bused, the buses aren't arriving on time, and the students aren't showing up for classes. That's a problem in a school district. However, because of this investigative journalism, the Alexandria City School Board proposed a policy on freedom of expression that would essentially put administrators of the school district in control, and specifically named the principal the editor-in-chief of their publication. So, Rosalia, we've talked a little bit before about what this felt like for you. What did this feel like for you, your relationship as a student journalist with the adults who are running the school district?
Yeah, so it was wild because being 16 years old, I'm already going through it. And then at the time, and then you have basically every single adult, every single person that you're supposed to just kind of naturally trust. Okay, these people are in charge, I want to listen to them, telling you that shut up and stop that, what are you doing? And that's very easy to believe as a teenager, because I'm being told to shut up all the time. A lot of the time it's probably for valid reasons. But I think in this case it very much was not.
Did you feel a direct connection to what you were reporting of the response that you were getting?
Yeah, I definitely did. When I first joined our high school newspaper, Theogony, in my sophomore year, and we had a bit of a history of doing some more investigative work, but really for the most part it was fall play. Do you like the spicy chicken sandwich at our lunchroom? You know, real.
It's good.
That's a yes.
Yeah. And then kind of, I think James really started us on a path towards more investigative pieces, especially with his piece that kind of, with these 2 high schools, administrators were being forced to basically reapply for their jobs under new conditions, which meant that a lot of them basically would not be able to be rehired under this new transition in our schooling. When we started doing that, it basically changed how we operated, how we communicated with the school around us. And it just, it made us a lot more visible to everyone around us. And also, but that, sorry. But that was also really hard for us with our administration, because suddenly we weren't just getting, oh, okay, we'll ignore you. You guys do whatever you want to do. It was now, I don't like that as much. And that kind of is when we started getting some pushback really at the end of my sophomore year, when our PR team came in and basically sat us down, explained for an hour what a PR team was, and then and then said, okay guys, going forward we need a PR team person in every single room with every single person you interview from the school. And we said, well, we're a high school newspaper. When I'm interviewing the drama club about that fall play review, is that really important you be there? They said, just the important stuff that we don't like. They also said,
It's all on recording too.
yeah.
And when you were working through this, what was the community response, James?
I mean, we had a massive community response from the reporting we had done. I mean, Rosalia mentioned a couple, you mentioned one too. But we had been making pretty big changes in our community. One of our articles resulted in, $1 million budget shift in our school district budget. We had parents, community members getting very upset at the school district for this busing situation, for the administrator situation. These were really beloved administrators in the community. And so this had really garnered a following of theogony. So we were kind of visible in the community. And then when they all of a sudden said, the principal is the editor, they need to edit anything that's controversial, you're not allowed to work for city newspapers or we'll discipline you, and you can't take pictures of students anymore. I mean, to me, that sounds crazy, right? Like, that's crazy. But they were all saying, no, this is completely normal. Every school is like that. And it actually is true. The Virginia model school board policy says to do all of that. And I'm not sure how it is around the country, but in the Virginia School Board Association, that is the model policy. And we were being told again and again and again, this is normal. And it was actually at a session at a conference sponsored by the SPLC that we saw a group of students from California who were encountering some similar issues, and they described what they were going through, how this beautiful, mystical, magical organization helped them solve everything. And we thought, wow, that sounds pretty cool.
And the SPLC helped you not just with pre-publication review and legal advice, but they also helped you draft a policy and advocate to the for the First Amendment.
Yeah, they really helped us. I mean, this is really nitty-gritty media law. Like, it was a lot, but they got us through it. So we drafted this policy with them. We proposed it. We showed the community, and we said, this is our policy. This is what we think is right. Because we had that following already, they were on our side. But our SPLC friends helped with some quotes in newspapers and stuff like that as well. So kind of showing that this is really something that's possible. It's the right thing to do. And now, thanks to SPLC, to Rosalia, the whole team, and Mary Beth Tinker, we have now the Tinker policy. The Tinker standard is being applied now to our school districts. So,
I'd like to open it to you two. What are your thoughts on what the sort of journalism these students are doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I'm sitting here thinking about, I'm not sure who said this. I think it's sometimes attributed to Katharine Graham, but you know how it is with these quotes. They could be, almost could be George Orwell, I'm not sure. But the quote is like, journalism is what somebody doesn't want you to know. The rest is advertising, or the rest is public relations. And I think that's what we're talking about here. This is when it gets uncomfortable, and when it gets to the truth, people in power try to shut it down. And we're seeing that, on the national level right now, and we're seeing it on the global level. And it never really changes. So the things that are the issues that you're describing are the same issues that you will encounter throughout your journalism career.
Lovely.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, you have a head up on us, because I didn't deal with any of this when I was in student media at all.
Did any of you ever think that it would just have been easier to throw in the towel, journalism wasn't for you?
I think for me it's especially easy. I go to a research institution where I go to research labs. I don't have to do journalism. It's really just a thing we choose to do out of passion. I'd have so much more free time if I stopped doing student journalism. I could maybe go to all of my classes instead of skipping it because I have an interview with someone. It'd be so much easier to stop, but then who would be focusing in on it? Dallas has some newspapers, but they focus on Dallas Central. They don't focus on what the colleges get up to on the day-to-day. They don't focus on the time that our dean of students referred to all Muslims on campus as rapists. They don't care about that because they have other things to do in the city of Dallas and the state of Texas. There are many things going on. And for us as student journalists, this is our prime opportunity. There are so many things going on that need to be covered, because it harms students if it just goes under the radar. Our student government got their budget cut by over $18,000, and they think it's normal for that to happen because they've been told it's normal. And right now we're working with them on an investigation where it's like, guys, that's actually not normal at all, and maybe you should have pushed back a bit more. Here's the resources we can use to help you push back. Resources like SPLC that have helped us push back and establish ourselves.
Yeah, I actually want to ask Margaret and Jean, what skills are you hearing that journalists these days are having to develop that are going to be useful in the profession as people who are practicing journalism, especially at the White House or writing nationally about the state of the media? What are they taking away from this, or what you hope they take away from this?
I mean, all those conversations that you guys are talking about are conversations that we have also had in different iterations, right? When you have your your administration at the school trying to tell you what to do, I've dealt with that on the national level, where the White House is trying to tell you what you can and can't do. And, you know, as president of the WHA, when I no longer speak for them. Great organization, still love them. Margaret is here, Tala, former president as well. And a lot of what you guys were talking about, where you have to figure out how to do your own PR and focus on law and look into precedent, is not exactly what anyone told you you were going to be doing as journalists. And it's becoming apparent to me, not just on the national level, but on every single level of journalism, that's happening, that we're having to learn skills that we weren't supposed to be learning, that, you know, the First Amendment felt like it was so sacrosanct that no one would try to deal with it. And I think we all walked around with that idea in our head, and that's not true. And so it's terrifying to see that on every level. Everyone's dealing with that, but these are skills that you guys will use, unfortunately, over and over again, right? Knowing that you can go to groups like the SPLC, that was a deep breath, I know, James, I'm sorry. But also just kind of like problem solving and standing up for yourself. There are gonna be so many sources who tell you BS. And so you have to, what you're learning with fighting with your principal is the exact same thing you're going to do in a meeting with, you know, some administrator at a state level telling you something isn't true when you know it is.
Margaret, last word here on this
I get
panel.
the last word. I guess the qualities that are coming to mind for me are persistence, toughness, courage, you know, curiosity. I mean, these are the things that make us want to do journalism, and they're the things that make journalism possible. And, you know, right now, you know, a lot of media organizations are capitulating and are rolling over, and we can't do that. You know, we have to stand up for our rights because we actually represent something big, which is the public interest.
It's the only job in the Constitution.
And so to close this session today, there's some final remarks from Charlotte Hampton, who is the editor-in-chief of Dartmouth's, I'm sorry.
I think we got some Q&A first.
Oh, we have Q&A? Oh, I didn't realize we had time. Okay, great. Let's have some audience Q&A. Sorry. You're gonna have to hold for a second, Charlotte.
Does anyone have a question?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, we would be happy to take questions. If you have questions, especially for the students or for Margaret and Eugene.
Josh, we got one up here too. Jean's got a question.
Thank you. Hi, all. This is very inspiring to hear from all of you. My name's Amy Kovac-Ashley, and I'm the executive director of the Tiny News Collective. And I was really struck, Gregorio, about just the idea that you all would strike out on your own. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about what it was like to create from the ground up your own institution.
Yeah, we had the privilege of getting a whole summer knowing that my head was on the chopping block, as it was so eloquently put to me. Because, okay, great, we know something's going to go down soon. So we spent that summer working with the Student Press Law Center, with the Society of Professional Journalists, to make our own kind of like ethical guidebook of like, these are the do's and don'ts in the state of Texas, what we should be doing. Because we wanted to revise the Mercury rules that hadn't been updated in like 2 decades. And we thought that would be like a prudent choice to make. And it was actually very useful for us because we had the foundations for our nonprofit already there because we had made it under the Mercury. We just switched out the names, switched out some of the mentions of the Mercury with the retrograde, cut out mentions of the director, and put in mention of our kind of like board of directors now. And it was this thing where, thanks to the advice from legal groups like the SPLC and from expert groups like the SBJ, we were able to very quickly get together a group of advisors for ourselves that is now on our board of directors. We were able to file as a nonprofit in the state of Texas, and we're still waiting on like 501c3 from the IRS. Don't know when they'll get back to us on that.
Keep waiting a while. That's right.
Next question, please.
Hi.
I'm with the Freedom Forum, and one of the things that our annual surveys show is this sort of disconnect with people who don't have exposure to journalism anymore. They don't appreciate the value of it because they don't see it. I'm just curious, when you do the tremendous work you've done in fighting for a free press, and by the way, I would do away with the phrase student journalist. I would say journalists who are students. But do you find that your fellow students are supportive? You know, we just don't have a lot of education about the First Amendment and about the value of journalism anymore. I worry a little bit about the loss of support, but I'm curious whether you've seen that in your circumstances.
I would say we've actually seen the opposite. I mean, I just know last year our staff was maybe the smallest it had ever been. We had around 18 people, which was great because while we were doing these hard-hitting news, everyone was doing at least 2 other articles about science fair. But after everything that happened last year and is still happening this year, it really reignited student interest in a lot of ways. Our staff basically doubled in size. We have so many sophomore staffers who are they're passionate about journalism, and they saw what happened last year, and they said, I want to get in on that. We weren't talking about cat torturers, but we still inspired some young people. But I think there's definitely something to be said about young people maybe not being as aware of the news in newspapers as they were in previous generations, but I don't think that's out of apathy or that they don't care. I think a lot of young people are actually very passionate or want to be passionate. They just don't know where to put that passion. And I think good student journalism, important student journalism can help people can help people and really get them on that path.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think our situation, as bad as it was, it also had a little silver lining in that it was a really good example to students in our school why they should care about the media. And we had a really beautiful moment at a school board meeting, many students in attendance protesting, holding signs in the back. Our student representatives to the school board in their portion of the meeting where they get to share, they stood up, they put on black armbands, and they said they weren't going to tolerate that censorship. And, you know, there really is a sense of solidarity that we experienced. I'll also note, though, that Alexandria across the river is an extremely politically active city. And so it's probably not representative of the average high school, but yeah.
Sure.
I'm a professor at the University of Maryland, College Park Journalism School. And I've always thought, if you're a 17-year-old and you are an incredible football player, the community looks at him as, oh, I can see him going to the NFL. If you're an unbelievable violin player, you can say, oh, they're going to be playing in the National Symphony Orchestra someday. What a cool kid. Wonderful. We should support him. I think student journalism is probably the only thing where the better you are, the more trouble you get into. And I've always thought that was highly ironic. But my first interaction with the SPLC was when I was a student journalist in 1977. And they've been awesome ever since. But I'm curious, what kind of support have you gotten from your families? Are they really, really proud of you? Have they helped you in any way? Because my experience with student journalists is there's always somebody there who's sort of given them an idea that it's okay to be brave.
Nobody wants to talk about their family.
Well, my oh, sorry.
I guess I was just going to briefly say, like, the thing that my family has said to me and family members of our staff has said is, like, guys, why don't you cut it out? Like, I keep seeing you in the Texas Tribune and Dallas Morning News about another thing you're up to. Why are you so messy with your school? And it's like, well, the school's doing bad things. Of course, we're going to talk about it in the news. We're not just student journalists, we're actual journalists. Like, I'm a freelancer in Dallas, and our staff works regularly with the network of journalists in Texas. So, of course, we're going to be in the papers you also read as our families. And it might be surprising sometimes because there is a lot of tension there. And the general thing has been like, guys, cut it out, just study.
I had, my two parents are here, so right there if you want to look. But they have been incredibly supportive of me throughout this whole process. I mean, I had a couple like, Mom, like, it's really not that bad if like we sue our school district. Like, it's gonna be fine. And she's like, what are you doing? But overall, I mean, they were definitely, they really stepped up to help us, and Rosalia's that as well.
Wait, did you sue the school district?
It was in the cards, but no.
It doesn't stop. Them being nervous for you does not stop. I'm 36 years old, and my mom's still worried about me all the time. She also doesn't see my name in other people's newspapers.
Yeah, my dad is here tonight in the back. Both my parents have been so incredibly supportive. My dad was a student journalist himself in high school, and he kind of was the one who encouraged me, like, hey, take Theogony, don't take the literary magazine, you can do it. I think he always likes to joke that he had the misfortune of having an incredibly supportive, kind, inviting administration, because he wished that he could be doing all of the stuff we have been. So I think he lives vicariously through me a little bit, but also he has been just the best, just the most supportive, loving dad ever.
And you all will want to go into journalism professionally after this, or? Yes?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I'm looking to do kind of like media law, that sort of thing after this. Maybe legal journalism, kind of like what you do covering the courts.
I'm not a lawyer.
I know.
I'm just a reporter.
Could I just speak to Lucy's point about, how people view, student athletes and, as opposed to student journalists. I mean, I guess just from a personal point of view, I want to say that I always thought that being a journalist was the coolest possible thing you could do. And I still do. I mean, and so I guess, I don't know, I don't really remember what my parents did or didn't think about it, but I don't think that, I think parents were less involved then somehow. But, I really felt like, and maybe it was sort of just this sort of post-Watergate, Woodward and Bernstein, the film, whatever. I just thought that, there was a glamour to it, but there was also a nobility to it, a public interest, and, it's a great profession. It's a great thing to do with your life. So, and how many of those student athletes actually end up in the NFL? Come on.
As a former football player at Colorado State University, between the two jobs I had while I was there, I'm only doing one of them still.
Okay, so we're going to have to wrap up there, but I appreciate all of your time, and we do have some remarks additionally from a current Student Press Law Center board member who also is still a college student. This is Charlotte Hampton. She is at Dartmouth. Charlotte is a very active member of the Student Press Law Center and advocate for student journalists across the country, but also she's the editor-in-chief of The D, the paper at the Dartmouth.
Yes.
Before she was the editor-in-chief, she was a reporter at The D, and last year, when she was reporting on campus protests on May 1st of 2024, she was arrested in the middle of people being arrested in those protests on campus at Dartmouth. She called her editor from jail. Her editor is another student at Dartmouth. That is who her one call went to, and that student editor called Mike here at the Student Press Law Center for advice on what to do to get Charlotte out of jail. They bailed her out, but she was facing criminal trespassing charges. And Charlotte did, after she was bailed out of jail,
$40.
It's important, not personal recognizance. A true bail bond. She called the SPLC, spoke to Mike, and the Student Press Law Center organized a letter to the college president at Dartmouth. After that letter was sent, the charges against Charlotte were dropped. However, Charlotte not only continues to report, she continues to be at Dartmouth making sure that that independent campus newspaper not only continues to exist, but the journalism they do is very powerful and is covering what's going on in the campus. One thing to note about this publication, The D, it is students teaching students. When they need help, they do not have a professor to call necessarily who's a journalism professor or anything else. They call the Student Press Law Center for legal help. Charlotte, turning it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is this okay? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm so excited to wrap up the evening. Yeah, Student Press Law Center has been absolutely invaluable for me as a student journalist, starting with my arrest. When I was arrested,
It's not funny.
Yeah. After I got bailed out of jail, I was not sleeping until I had a phone call with Mike, until I actually had a conversation with an adult who was on the phone with me, telling me what it meant that I had been charged with criminal trespass, telling me whether or not I was actually going to have to go to court, go to jail, because those things were actually weirdly up in the air for me then. There was no authority in my life other than Mike who really could tell me what was going on. He helped me psychologically and then on a very tangible level as well, because the day after SPLC sent that letter, my charges were dropped. The college came forward and basically said, okay, fine, we'll drop her charges. So they were a light for me in this kind of cloud of despair in the week between getting arrested and having my charges dropped. And I spoke about the arrest a year ago on a panel like these guys, and I kind of thought I really had a sense of the importance of student journalism. A year ago, I'd just been arrested, and here I was talking about this, and I had no idea. I took over the job of being editor-in-chief in March, and nothing has underscored for me how difficult and important this work is than the last 6 months since taking over this job. There have been so many threats to student journalism over the course of the past year, and being editor-in-chief and facing the immense psychological stress of handling a staff of 300 student journalists has underscored that for me more than ever. When we were facing takedown requests in the spring from international students, the SPLC was the group that we went to. When I was running a story on the use of the N-word in Dartmouth fraternities, Mike was the person I emailed to review it for pre-publication. I also literally got a call from my publisher last night saying we're being hit with a lawsuit, and the county sheriff is in Hanover right now trying to call me and him to court, so I'll have to talk to Mike about that later tonight, because I also don't really know what that means. And as Caitlin said, we are 100% independent, like I am the adult in the room and I'm 21. So we need organizations like SPLC who we can go to when we need someone who actually knows the ins and outs of the legal work that we're doing. I genuinely don't know who would have done the advocacy for me after I got arrested if it wasn't the SPLC. I don't know if the college would have dropped my charges if it wasn't for the SPLC. I don't know how I would have handled takedown requests from international students in the spring if it wasn't for SPLC. And this is not just me. This is a phenomenon that's sweeping across college campuses. This is student journalism everywhere in America today. Like, I am here to tell you that student journalists today, with what's happening in higher education, with what's happening with the federal government, with what's happening with international student journalists coming into my office crying, we feel like everything is on fire, and we need the support of adults to come forward and help us do the work that we're doing, because we cannot do it without groups like SPLC, and we cannot do it without people like you. So thank you so much for coming tonight. I encourage you to scan the QR code up there and donate, and pull out the card from underneath your seat, because we need you more than ever. So thank you, and the bar is open again.